One of the biggest pros for living in Kennesaw, Georgia is that it's a great suburb for families. Kennesaw is in Cobb County, which is made up of many suburbs, including Marietta, Smyrna, Powder Springs, and Kennesaw. That kind of suburban living is a very big draw for many people, especially families who are looking for community and good school districts. And Kennesaw certainly has those things. Kennesaw is mostly residential with some sporadic, like commercial areas throughout the city, but Kennesaw also has fantastic schools. According to greatschools.org, Kennesaw has an average 8 out of 10 school rating in that city. And then as far as community goes, they have great community as well. Kennesaw has a lot of neighborhoods that have these kinds of HOAs with pools and clubhouses and tennis courts, which really provide a great place for many of the neighbors and the residents to get to know each other. Unlike some of the other cities in Cobb County, like Marietta or Smyrna, Kennesaw is a little farther northwest of those cities, so there's a little bit less people in Kennesaw, Georgia. That means that there's not long lines at the grocery store or tons of people at the park. There's not really a whole bunch of traffic, except for Barrett Parkway, in Kennesaw, Georgia. The amount of people that are there is really spread out among the city. So it's not overcrowded, it's not overpopulated in Kennesaw, Georgia. So if you're wanting to live in one of the suburbs where the homes are not right on top of each other and each home has a big enough lot size, for the kids to play in and having a backyard, Kennesaw is a great option for that. Some of the other suburbs in Cobb County, like Ackworth or Marietta, tend to grow each year. There's more and more people living in those cities, but Kennesaw tends to not be one of those suburbs. Because of that, Kennesaw doesn't have that kind of growth year after year that some of the other cities do in Cobb County. Another huge pro about living in Kennesaw is Kennesaw Mountain. Before we talk about Kennesaw, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has reached out to me about living in the suburbs of Atlanta. If you're thinking about living here or you just want to know what it's like to move to Atlanta, feel free to call or text anytime. I'm more than happy to help. But Kennesaw Mountain is an enormous national park right here in the city of Kennesaw. In fact, Kennesaw Mountain is in multiple cities, not just Kennesaw. I think some of Kennesaw Mountain is in Marietta, and then some of it may also be down into Smyrna. But overall, Kennesaw Mountain is 3,000 acres of woods and trails, and of course, the 1 mile hike to the top of the mountain. Right off of the interstate of Stylesboro and Old 41 is like the main welcome center of Kennesaw Mountain. They have a lot of Civil War history museum stuff there. And then there's also a bunch of trailheads right there in that area. The parking for Kennesaw Mountain can be kind of difficult. They don't have a very big parking lot there at the welcome center. So you may have to walk a little bit to get to that main trailhead there for Kennesaw Mountain. But once you do get there, the trail to the top of the mountain is 1 mile. It's a great hike. And then they also have the road that also leads to the top of the mountain. So if you're not wanting to make that hike, you can drive to the top. Also, you can just walk up the road as well. The views from the top of Kennesaw Mountain are absolutely amazing. Certainly the best views in all of Kennesaw, maybe even all of Cobb County. And then another big pro about Kennesaw, Georgia is that it's in Cobb County. Not all of the counties in Georgia have, the kind of home values and the kind of community and access to Atlanta that Cobb County does. And that's really one of the main reasons why so many people want to live in Cobb County. Cobb County has historically been one of the best counties in all of Georgia. Excellent school ratings, and then also very easy access to the city of Atlanta, and Kennesaw is one of those cities. Another huge benefit of Kennesaw, Georgia is its proximity to Atlanta while still remaining suburban or having the kind of rural feel that Kennesaw has. You're not super close to the city of Atlanta like Sandy Springs or Roswell, but you still have easy access to Atlanta, especially with Interstate 75 being so close to the city of Kennesaw. Getting to Atlanta is relatively easy from Kennesaw. And then because Kennesaw is a little farther northwest, than say Marietta. Kennesaw has like the kind of rural feel or the country feel that you find in really the outskirts of the metro Atlanta area. Something else that goes along with that is the amount of green space that you can find in Kennesaw. Some parts of Marietta really have like no green space. Again, Smyrna, Sandy Springs, a lot of these places are kind of limited in the amount of green space that we have here. Overall, Metro Atlanta has a lot of green space. So if you're coming from another state or out of country, you may be surprised with just how much greenery we have here in Metro Atlanta. Atlanta is described as a city in the woods because there are trees and vegetation everywhere in Metro Atlanta. In fact, I heard someone recently describe Atlanta as being tropical just because of how much greenery we have here. And Kennesaw really fits that description very well. Most of Kennesaw, if not all of Kennesaw, has tons of green space, trees, lots of parks in Kennesaw. And again, that's because it's a little farther away from the city of Atlanta, but you're still getting the suburban feel in Kennesaw. Okay, let's talk about some of the bad parts of Kennesaw, Georgia. Now, unfortunately, one of the busiest roads in Kennesaw is Barrett Parkway. And this is because the majority of the commercial spaces are on Barrett Parkway in Kennesaw. So the majority of the restaurants, the majority of the shopping, there's a Target, there's of course Chick-fil-A there on Barrett Parkway, which is the most important if you're living in Georgia. Tons of grocery stores. Also, Cobb County International Airport is very close to Barrett Parkway, and the mall is close to Barrett Parkway, and 575 and Interstate 75 are right there off of Barrett Parkway. When you put all of these things together, the rush hour traffic on Barrett Parkway is the worst. If you're ever in this area, you really want to try to avoid Barrett Parkway, especially during rush hour traffic. It's amazing how you can drive through the rest of Kennesaw and be like, wow, there's just not a lot of people who live here. But then when you get to Barrett Parkway, that's where everybody is. Barrett Parkway always has tons of people, tons of cars. You're going to find a lot of people there on Barrett Parkway and in the commercial spaces off of Barrett Parkway. Another downside to living in Kennesaw, Georgia, is that there really isn't a lot of diversity there. As far as Metro Atlanta goes, Kennesaw may be one of the least diverse parts of Metro Atlanta. However, as a minority myself, you should know that I have no problem being in Kennesaw. It's not like it's unsafe or dangerous to be in Kennesaw. They don't have a lot of diversity there in Kennesaw, but everybody there is very welcoming of other races and other ethnicities. By no means would I feel, hesitant to go into Kennesaw because of that. By no means is Kennesaw dangerous, but Kennesaw really could do a lot better when it comes to diversity in the neighborhoods and in the schools. So certainly something to think about if you're thinking about living in Kennesaw. And then, of course, with the kind of country living or the rural living that you can find in Kennesaw comes the amount of pine trees that they have there. And these pine trees, for a lot of people, can cause problems. For example, pine trees tend to grow fast and they grow very tall, but that also means that the average lifespan of a pine tree is not quite as long as other trees. Now, this may not seem like a big deal to you, but it's very common for there to be pine trees around people's homes in Kennesaw, but also in other parts of Metro Atlanta too. But you really find this a lot there in the city of Kennesaw, and pine trees near a home can very often be problematic. The last thing that you want is one of these pine trees falling over on top of a house. So if you have pine trees near a home in Kennesaw, it is regularly advised to get rid of pine trees that are too close to the home. On top of that, pine trees also cause a lot of pollen. And as we've talked about many times in this channel, the amount of pollen that we have in Metro Atlanta is just super high. People with seasonal allergies tend to have a lot of problems here in Metro Atlanta because of the amount of different allergens that we have during the springtime. And mainly that's caused by the pollen from the pine trees. And then the schools in Kennesaw are not all very good. They have some very good schools in Kennesaw, but some of the schools that maybe are a little bit farther out are not quite as good. So if you're thinking about moving to Kennesaw, you have to be kind of specific about what part of the city you're wanting to live in if schools are a big importance for you. And then this next point, I'm not really sure if it's a pro or a con. It really just depends on your preference, but the average home value in Kennesaw is about 5 or 600,000. If you want to know more about the homes and the neighborhoods in Kennesaw, Georgia, click on this video where I talk all about Kennesaw. See you there.